Hello, denizens. Well, Amazon Prime has released a documentary on John Candy, the much loved Canadian comedian. It's a bitter-sweet doc about a great actor who died too early. But you might be interested in knowing that it was because of John Candy that I met my wife, Ramona. I'm I'm shocked that the producers of I Like Me did not call me to recount that legendary story. Sure, they covered his career on the Second City stage, SCTV, movies like Stripes, National Lampoon Vacation, Splash, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, and many others, but to leave out how I met Ramona was, I think, a huge oversight, which I will fix presently. Come to think of it, I'll have to throw Catherine O'Hara into this also. I should have invited them to our wedding. Anyway, this is a small personal story you're more than welcome to bail on. I don't want to waste your precious time because usually I talk about big things like Disney and Hollywood and stuff like that. This is just about little old me and my personal experience. But after watching the documentary, it was interesting to see some of the parallels between my experience in showbiz and John's. I mean, except for the huge success. But I had a chance to work with him at the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal. Anyway, I'll talk about that later. But to begin with, I was walking through the halls of my alma mater, Ryerson Polytechnical Institute in Toronto, back around 1975, when I ran into Catherine O'Hara filming a TV commercial. I had already been to Second City many times where she starred. It was an era that included Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Gilda Radner, Eugene Levy, Joe Flaherty, and Andrea Martin. She was on a break. I went up to her and said hi and asked about getting into comedy, like in how to get into it. She suggested that I take the Second City courses. I did. $7 a lesson every Saturday to have the privilege of being yelled at and abused by an alcoholic member from Chicago. That's another story. The point I was making is that it got me into improv, into the improv community, which then beget theater sports, competitive improv developed by Keith Johnstone in Calgary, Alberta. You might recognize elements of it from the TV show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Okay, you got all that? Now, zip ahead to 1982. The Frantics comedy troupe, which I was a member of, some of you know, was now fairly famous. And here is the Candy connection. John's mother, Evangeline, worked at the Eaton's downtown department store. Ramona worked with Mrs. Candy at Eaton's. On the day of Mrs. Candy's retirement from Eaton's, John arranged a special party for her at the Second City stage, featuring much of the cast of SCTV. People that worked with Mrs. Candy were also invited to the show, which included Ramona. At the show, there was an aspiring improv comedian, Enrico, whose name I'm changing just for the sake of not getting punched out, who was taken with Ramona, of course, and invited her over to theater sports not far away because she was drunk. She said yes. That was her story. I was already at the venue where theater sports lived just to enjoy an evening of improv when Enrico showed up with Ramona. We knew each other. Enrico and I, of course. He introduced me to his date, Ramona, and said, "Hey, Paul, I'm performing tonight. Would you mind keeping Ramona company?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Wow. And so while the show progressed and Enrico was busy on stage occupied, I got a talking to Ramona. I liked her and asked her if she was free the next day for a dinner. I remember she was taken aback. I mean, she said something like, "But I'm with Enrico." Then I asked if she was dating him. She said she had just met him at Second City. "So you're not dating him?" I said. "What's the problem?" She thought about it and said, "Yeah, sure." We exchanged phone numbers, had dinner the following evening, and we were engaged 6 months later. So, there you go. Thank you, Catherine and John, for helping me find my Ramona. Okay, now let's fast forward to my one and only experience working with John. In 1993, I was shooting some sketches for the British version of Just for Laughs. I got to write for Richard Belzer, Graham Chapman, and Rowan Atkinson. That was, obviously a lot of fun. I also watched the main stage events from The Wings, and one night John Candy had been hired to host. The same night as Henny Youngman performed and had to be dragged off the stage because he was supposed to do only 5 minutes but refused to leave or forgot to leave. That's what happens when you're an 87-year-old comedian. Anyway, the night before, I went out drinking with John, not realizing that it was one of his favorite sports. At about 2 a.m. in the morning, I suggested that maybe we should, head back. We got work to do. He was having too much fun, and I bailed because I was getting suspicious looks from the waitress for nursing only one beer all evening. I don't know how late he stayed up, but the next day, John arrived at the rehearsal for the televised main stage show without a voice, or much of a voice. He could barely croak out the names of the acts. That was sad, but sadder that he died the following year. The show is a wonderful tribute to John, and if you are fans of the rest of the SCTV crew, then it's worth it just for that. John was a people pleaser, and they say that was not the best personality trait if you wanted to survive Hollywood. But thank you for letting me find my Ramona. My Ramona. That would be a good song. There you go, denizens. Be seeing you.